Hello and welcome to this edition of Tips and Tricks. Now today, I'm going to be talking about night fishing. I got a comment from one of my viewers that said he'd like to see me do a video about fishing at night. Well, I have a little bit of experience in this. Not much more recently, but actually back when I was a kid and in high school, I used to fish at night all the time. My local lake that I fished, although you couldn't have a boat on the water at night, you could fish until 10 o'clock before they close the gates. And so I used to go there and I would fish at the launch ramp. There were two different launch ramps. One was very steep and near deeper water, and off to the left it had a boat house with big bright lights on it. And the other launch ramp was a little further away, sort of in the middle of the cove, shallower, but it did have an actual big bright light, street light shining down on it. And I used to go there, and next to the boat dock I would fish a chrome and blue cordell spot. And I used to catch a lot of fish right there on the chrome and blue cordell spot. At night most people say dark lures, black lures, but there's so much light there that they can see the reflection from it. It's got rattles, they can home in on it. And then the other launch ramp I used to fish spinnerbaits and worms. It was shallower over there. There were some weeds and lily pads, but I wouldn't go to blacks or dark colors. My spinnerbaits were lighter colors. My worms were not necessarily dark colors, but that's where I always caught them. I went to places where there were lights and constant lights. The fish are used to it. It attracts insects. It attracts the bait fish, which attracts the bass. And it's their whole life. It's always been lit up, so they're used to being there in bright light at night. Well, more recently, I actually fished one tournament at night, and I figured, okay, well, I'll target launch ramps and marinas, places where there were bright lights. I mean, we were there on a full moon, but I wanted to target those areas. Well, in our tournament, those areas were, in fact, off limits. So I was sort of left in an abyss. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to fish under just moonlight, so I didn't do very well. Then we had another tournament, and I did some research. I read about what lures. I know darker color surface lures or darker soft jerk baits, but I found that the major lure I found that people used at night was a darker spinnerbait. So I got a hold of the spinnerbait. I did it in black, but I had a little bit of chartreuse at the top and a chartreuse trailer, figuring that they see it from below. It's got a dark silhouette, but if they see it from the side, maybe the chartreuse will attract them and hone them in. Well, I had a bluff that I was actually fishing. It was about a half-mile long, and once dark came, the moon was just rising, so there was shade on this bluff. Well, I caught a bunch of fish, and the whole time I was catching them, the shade was on the bluff. As the moon got higher towards the end of the tournament, the shade got thinner and thinner, and eventually towards the end of it, there was no shade at all because the moon had moved over enough that it was shining bright on it. Well, during that time, I found out that I would only catch the fish if I cast into the shady part. As the shade got thinner and I cast to a place where the moon was on it, nothing. The last hour of the tournament, once the moon was up and it was bright on the whole thing, I never got another hit. So, I guess through my experience at night fishing, if there's places where there's docks or launch ramps that have bright lights, focus on those spots, and you don't necessarily have to use a darker lure. I used a spot. I used things with shine. I caught a bunch of fish that way. If you're out in the moonlight only, no bright lights, I guess bass sort of act like they do when it's sunny out. They want the shade. Once the full moon gets on it, suddenly they don't want to feed. Well, that's just my experience of night fishing. It's not extensive, but I hope it helps. I hope it gives you some clues of what to do when you're fishing at night. And as always, until next time.